You mentioned things falling off of tall buildings. There's plenty of tall buildings. New York City, 50 miles away, so think about that. The shaking's here at the ground, but you have a tall building. The top of the building is moving a lot more than the bottom. That's how things can fall off. Luckily, the shaking is not as strong as it reaches New York City, but it's a lot stronger right here around the Lebanon, New Jersey area. That's the epicenter of the quake, but also closest major airport is Newark Airport, a ground stop there, 4.8 magnitude here. We also have a ground stop at JFK. LaGuardia is okay. They've done a lot of recent renovations. Let's talk about the Richter scale, or the magnitude scale. It used to be called the Richter scale. Now it's the magnitude scale. From 0 to 1.9, you can definitely detect it. We have hundreds of these every single day. No one talks about it because you don't feel it. Once you get above 2, you might see things move around, but also perhaps someone's coming down the stairs. The chandelier might move around as that as well, so it's hard to really detect if that's an earthquake. Once you get above 3 to close to 3.9, vibrations are similar to a big truck coming on by. Then we get into this morning's earthquake kind of magnitude scale. Definitely, trust me, there's a big difference of energy between a 4.8, what we had this morning, and a 4.9. You get closer to 4.9, yes, you can have windows or small objects break and fall. You probably have a little bit of that right around the epicenter, and as it moves out, not as strong in terms of what's actually being felt. And even above that, then we start getting the cracks in the walls and major foundation damage to buildings and homes. That's a 5 to a 5.9. So luckily, it has not been that strong, and we hope the aftershocks don't stay that strong, or even what it was this morning. But right now, ground stop right now until 12:30. Hopefully that's another time. How much time do we have on that? It's another 12 minutes before we get to hopefully lifting that ground stop there. Also ground stop at JFK as well. Make sure everything is safe. The runways are smooth, no cracks or damage to that, and the towers are safe as well. But we have our nor'easters, so definitely on the cool side. If you lost power, that's a concern. Luckily, a lot of sunshine right now, but much of the Northeast, even New England, we actually do have some hazards, some risk for more earthquakes in general. This one definitely caught a lot of people by surprise this morning.
Welcome back to Pattern. We're going to be watching what's going on in Morristown, New Jersey. So we've been talking about that earthquake, and we're looking at this video, Jordan. It's shaking, isn't it? You see some shaking.
You got the camera shake there, and obviously if you didn't have the earthquake notification, you would think maybe this is wind-driven since we are the Weather Channel. But the fact that we had some quake, a big quake, I'd say relatively big quake for the area in the East Coast. Morristown, New Jersey definitely felt it. This was captured 30 minutes away from the epicenter itself. And remember, because we're on the East Coast, more and more of you actually have felt this than would be if you would have the same size quake here on the West. So if you just kind of look in the distance, you see things swaying around. I was trying to see if anything were to fall. Thankfully, nothing fell over. You got the little grass spreader there on the right side of the screen, but I think that's already on its side.
Yeah, you can hear.
Look at the bird feeder. You could actually see the bird feeder straight ahead, swinging under the tree.
Okay, there you go. That's the sound that I was hearing earlier.
Right.
Yeah. And like you said, Jordan, if you weren't watching the news and really familiar with what's going on, then you really wouldn't even know that possibly some of you that an earthquake had hit. But again, we're going to continue.
And it's not much, right? I mean, some of these, this was relatively shallow.
Yes.
Paul was talking a lot about that. Depth really matters when it comes to earthquakes and how much we feel it here on the surface.
Right. On the East Coast, we're not feeling, we actually feel it a little bit more because the ground is so hard.
Correct.
Yes.
It shakes, larger footprint, which impacts more people.
Yeah.
And of course, Paul, as we were kind of looking at that video, you can see a little bit of stuff swinging from the trees.
The trees, the bird feeder, you said, and that's 30 miles from the epicenter too. So it's not like it is, right on top of that. So the farther away you go, the not as strong as the right at the epicenter, which is close to Lebanon, New Jersey here, and it's relatively shallow, 2.9 miles deep. So that's close to where we live here on the surface, so we see and feel a lot more shaking nearby. But where'd you feel it? You felt it from D.C., Northern Virginia, all the way up to parts of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. Again, a lot of rock here, so it helps to kind of transmit that energy, but it's not nearly as violent if you have a lot of, perhaps, landfill like they do and the high water content in the soil like they do in the Bay Area, California, so those waves can really even get wilder and wilder. But the higher up you go, the bigger the swings get. You might notice those trees on that video. The tops of the trees were shaking a lot more. So again, epicenter 90 miles from Philly, almost 200, 190 from Baltimore. but only 50 from New York City. So a lot of videos on social media of what's happening and what happened this morning in New York City. 2.9, anything below that, you're not really feeling it unless you have a seismograph here. So you might see things start shaking in that 2 to 2.9, 3 to 3.9 intensity scale. The vibration similar to a big car or truck rumbling by you. You feel the ground kind of shake. But then we get into what happened this morning. That's when you could see very close to the epicenter, things like windows breaking, small objects moved off of shelves, maybe even fallen as well. Higher than that, and then you get the structural damage. So it hasn't been that type of earthquake widespread across the Northeast this morning, thank goodness. So it's hard to get that. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Right now we have a delay here. Ground stop has been lifted, but still delays trying to catch up on the massive ground stop they had for nearly 2 hours there. So expect more delays to kind of bounce around the country because of that. Again, 4.8 magnitude at 10:23 this morning, the earthquake here in northern New Jersey. And yes, this part of much of the East Coast, believe it or not, outside of Florida, you have a risk for earthquakes. This is our seismic map, and you notice northern New Jersey, we do have a medium intensity of having earthquakes.
Aftershock,
Right.
What do you need to do to stay safe? Now, kind of two scenarios. One is you're indoors, one is you're outdoors. And now if you're indoors, I think the phrase is stop, drop, cover.
Yes.
Right? You want to, not be running around. You want to put something sturdy over you. You're not standing in the doorways necessarily, but get under something.
Like a table, a very sturdy table.
Right. Now, if you're outdoors, you want to be away from anything that could fall on you. That could be a tree, that could be a power line, could be a chimney, could be anything. So you want to get away from. If you're already outdoors, don't go inside and be as much out in the open as you can, so nothing can fall on you.
That might be a little bit hard in Midtown Manhattan.
But you can kind of look around and see what might fall on me and what can I do to get to a safer place as best you can. Right.
All right. Well, what else do we know? Well, here's what else we know right now concerning travel. Amtrak has initiated its inspection protocol following the quake, and they'll be inspecting all of the track. Delays should be expected. And New Jersey Transit posted on X that its train system was subject to delays caused by bridge inspections. We've been talking about that. Initial inspections by New York's MTA indicate no damage to MTA infrastructure, which of course is very, very good news for the subway system there. Now, what about air travel?
Yeah, air travel has also been crippled in some places this afternoon. At one point, both Newark and JFK were under ground stops, and we showed you what's going on still at Newark, where you got the ground delays. But of course, flights have been delayed since then. So if you're flying out of the Northeast hubs, you want to be sure to check ahead of time with your airline for the new flight itinerary. Breaking news today, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake strikes in Lebanon, New Jersey, in the northern portion of the state around 10:30 this morning, only about 45 miles west of New York City. The shaking lasted for several seconds. Some people reporting like about 45 seconds of shaking. But the New York Yankees, seemingly unbothered by the quake, and their batting practice went on without a hitch. If you're outdoors, not in a building that responds, then you maybe won't feel it as much, Jeff.
That's right. And we're staying on top of this breaking news out of the Northeast. Again, just to reiterate, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake reported in Lebanon, New Jersey, and was felt all across the tri-state. Thankfully, so far, no reports of any major damage or any loss of life. Definitely the best news we've gotten so far.
Yeah, and you want to, if you were in a building that experienced the earthquake, you want to just look around, make sure there's not any obvious signs of damage. You want to make sure there's not a gas leak or something.
Right.
Or, that would be an isolated occurrence, but you do want to check for that. Aftershocks, we've already had a lesser aftershock. We could have more aftershocks that could be approaching maybe what we had already.
That's right.
And so you want to know what to do. Drop, cover, hold on. If you're indoors, if you're outdoors, stay out there.
Just
Stay
try to
far away.
yeah.
Stay away. It says far away from anything that could fall on you.